Since the declaration by the federal government of Nigeria that 13 trillion deficit in the 48 trillion 2025 budget proposal will be financed through borrowing, economic experts have been speaking up on ways to salvage the economic situation in the country. To a greater majority, production in the areas of manufacturing of goods and exports are critical for economic growth. However, Nigeria's budget deficits have constantly increased year in, year out. It should be noted that a budget deficit practically occurs in Nigeria when government expenditure surpasses its generated revenue. Thus, the mishandling of fiscal deficit in Nigeria has been a major cause of economic crisis since 1980 to date. Joining us now on this show to discuss alternatives to deficit budgeting and how to build first-class infrastructure without borrowing is Dr. Teriba, Chief Executive Officer of Economic Associates. Good morning, Dr. Teriba.
Good morning, Dr. Bati.
Welcome. Well, the last time,
thank you very much.
I met with you on another program, This Day Live. You were talking about an asset-centered approach to managing the deficit in the 2025 budget, as opposed to a revenue-based approach.
Yes.
You want the disposal of assets to generate economic growth. If you could explain that principle again to us.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bati. It was actually on this same program.
Oh, was it on Morning Show?
On Christmas Eve.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we discussed the budget that had just been proposed, by His Excellency, the President. Morning, Ayo.
Good morning.
Morning.
You're welcome.
Morning.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you. Morning, viewers. Right. You've put the issues on the table. The two issues, you can take deficits for granted. Governments all over the world, in trying to improve the lot of their populace, tend to have to spend beyond their revenue. So, in trying to finance the deficit, you have two alternatives. You have debt financing, and you have non-debt alternatives. So what we'll be talking about is non-debt alternatives. And you are right about the fact that two financing models is you can finance either your expected income or your assets, and that debt boxes you into the corner that you are talking only in terms of your expected income. You are not talking at all about your asset. So when you shift your attention to asset, it doesn't have to be debt, okay? It could be equity, and it could be investment-grade bond, some of which are equity equivalent, some of which are convertible to equity. Then I would like to correct the notion that when we say asset financing, it doesn't mean asset disposal.
So does it mean securitization
of
assets?
It doesn't mean asset disposal. It only means that you want to give external parties opportunities to invest, in actualizing the potentials of the asset. A good example is in our situation, what Nigeria should have switched to the asset financing mode since 2015. The commodity prices started falling in the second half of 2014, and our GDP has declined steadily from maybe above 600 billion, to below 300 billion now. So doing income financing, where you know that the trend of your GDP in dollar terms is downward, boxes you into a debt trap. Yeah. So you should have switched to asset the way Saudi, India, Brazil did.
Let me come in there because I was going to interrogate, because you've been a proponent of this for a while now, and you've been consistent about this. You've cited Saudi Aramco, how they were able to use their state oil reserves and make it one of the most valuable companies in the world.
Yes.
We have something similar here in Nigeria, very easy, NNPC, NNPCL. Why haven't we been able to maximize NNPCL or other state-owned infrastructures like that, as other countries have been able to do, as you've cited countries like
Yes.
Saudi and others?
Yes. Well, it's time to encourage the government to travel down this lane. And the Saudi example is striking in that till date, the Saudi Arabian government started with 1.9% IPO. So they haven't disposed Aramco. They only did minimum issue to establish the market value of the company. And that company has now been known to be worth $2 trillion or slightly more than $2 trillion. With that, they have approached global markets to raise sukuks, asset-based funding. So that's what we rob ourselves of, because you said NMPC, it has no market value. So you own it, it's of no benefit, your ownership of it has no benefit for you because it has no market value. It's only if you sell oil or you sell gas that you can make money from NNPC. Whereas, if you take the step and do some minimal IPO, you can take that market value to the market and raise asset-based financing over it. Saudi has listed its football clubs and is investing, in global stars to enhance the value of the clubs because increased value for assets. These are corporate assets. But you are not limited to corporate assets. India, for example, are looking at real estate. They are looking at infrastructure assets. And they have a platform. Saudi also has a platform where they've listed 200 projects that they are trying to fund. India has 15,000 projects. They are trying to raise $2 trillion. And they are reckoning the dollars in billions. So it brings you foreign direct investment. So it also brings you domestic direct investment. So you reduce the amount that you have to fund by debt.
Speaking of Saudi, very apt conversation, because I was in Saudi recently and they were talking about Neom City. Most of the money was coming from external funding, feeding into the economy. But the attractiveness of Nigeria to doing that. NNPC at some point talked about an IPO. We've not seen anything down the line. They talked about the fact that people can come in. In fact, it's not only NNPC. Till today, I still feel assets like NIPOST, with the kind of land assets that IPOs have, if you make a global IPO for logistics about NIPOST, you can't get some valuables coming, because there's virtually no part of this country that NIPOST doesn't have a patch of land or two in the post office boxes and all of that. Many other assets like that. Nigerian, MTEL or NITEL back in the days, we have still a big building out there, which is the tallest building in this country. That's an infrastructure that is wasting away marina. Why can't we be innovative as we wrap up?
Right. We have to address, the pitch the advocacy is to the government. None of these companies that you have mentioned own themselves. They are owned by the government. And it's interesting that the Nigerian government has supported the development of a vibrant equity market, but has no issue in that equity market. Blue chip companies, private companies are the only ones that are listed. You want a situation in which more or less every government-owned company is listed. It will strengthen the public sector's balance sheet. And you will not need to be going to issue debt to finance deficit. You will have better options, asset-based financing options. And for infrastructure, many of the infrastructure, they can fund themselves. Like you say, a city. India is, funding 100 smart cities as part of the 15,000 projects that they have there. So it's to encourage the government, to consider,
asset-based financing.
that's equity-based and investment-grade bonds to finance projects. So we have a situation. I had you on the program, was it yesterday, saying that the performance of the 2024 budget was less than 50%. I don't know if we were talking of the capital budget or the overall budget.
Yeah, I think capital. Recurrent was about 49%. Capital
So
was 49%.
if you could create a platform where we could put the capital projects that private sector could invest in, maybe more of the capital projects will be funded.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Teriba, for joining us. So many things to talk about, including the earlier discussion about pension, and now DMO being asked to go and raise bonds to take care of pension areas. But we've run out of time. It's a great delight having you on the program again today.